we talk about love all the time. But what is it, really? We usually define it by all the good stuff, right? The joy, the connection. But maybe, just maybe, the truest way to understand love is by looking at what happens when it's gone. We're going to explore that really deep, intense link between grief, love, and who we are after a loss. So there's this really haunting episode of the show Black Mirror, and this quote from our review just nails it. In the story, a woman tries to replace her dead husband with his AI, like a perfect copy made from all his online data. But it's just off. It doesn't have his weird habits, his little imperfections, the stuff you'd never post online. The little things that only love and memory hold on to. And that whole sci-fi idea makes you ask a very real question, doesn't it? When you lose someone you love, it can feel like a part of you is gone too. So much of who we are is tied up in our relationships. So how do you figure out who you are when one of those relationships just vanishes? Okay, so we usually save these deep, heavy questions for when we lose a partner, or a parent, or a child. That's a kind of grief we all understand and expect. But what if that incredible bond is with someone who can't even speak our language? Yeah, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the grief we feel for our pets. For so many of us, that bond is just as powerful, just as life-changing as any other. But is that just a feeling, or is there something real, something clinical going on? Well, let's see what the research says. To really get into this, we need to talk about something called prolonged grief disorder, or PGD. Now, this isn't just being sad. This is a severe, debilitating grief that can go on for months, even years, and it can literally stop you from living your life. It's a very real mental health condition. All right, so check this out. Research has found that after the devastating loss of a partner, this is the percentage of people who develop PGD, about 1 in 11. That's a huge number, and it really shows how deep that human bond is. Now, I want you to hold that number in your head for a second. And this is the percentage of people who experience that exact same clinical condition after the death of a pet. Almost 1 in 13. Just let that sink in for a moment. I mean, seeing these numbers side by side it's pretty striking, isn't it? The rates of this severe, life-altering grief are so incredibly close. From a psychological standpoint, the symptoms are the same. And that tells us something really, really important about how legitimate the love we have for our pets truly is. And this isn't some rare thing either. Think about it. So many of us have pets, and their lives are so much shorter than ours, which means this kind of grief is incredibly common. In fact, some research estimates that a staggering 1 out of every 12 cases of PGND in the UK comes from losing a pet. Wow. So, okay, if the grief is just as real, how do we deal with it? What's the difference between someone who can process this loss and someone who gets stuck? Well, a lot of it comes down to the different strategies our brains use to handle overwhelming emotions. The key idea here is something called emotion regulation. The best way to think about it is like your mind has this internal toolkit for dealing with emotions, everything from being a little annoyed to, well, profound loss. And according to research, the specific tools you choose to use can make all the difference. So let's start with the helpful tools. Researchers found that people who coped better tended to use strategies like these. Positive refocusing is when you intentionally think about the happy times, putting things into perspective. That's acknowledging the pain, but also seeing the amazing life you gave them. And then there's simple, powerful acceptance. And on the other side of the coin, you have the unhelpful stuff, the strategies that actually make things worse. Rumination is when you get stuck in a loop, just replaying the pain. Catastrophizing is when your mind just spirals. Self-blame, that can be a big one with pets, especially around this tough end-of-life decisions. And expressive suppression, just bottling it all up, that can really get in the way of healing. But look, this kind of intense grief doesn't just come from nowhere, right? It only exists because the bond itself is so incredibly strong. The connection we have with our pets isn't just some nice idea. It has real, measurable effects on our entire lives. And I'm not just talking about feeling good. The human-animal bond can actually lead to real, tangible improvements in our health, both physical and mental. And science is getting better and better at measuring exactly that. Take this study, for example. Researchers looked at over 300 pet owners, and get this, almost half of them said that having their pet around helped reduce feelings of anger, depression, and loneliness. That's a huge therapeutic effect, just from having them by our side. And the benefits are all over the place. I mean, they reduce our stress and anxiety, they help with loneliness, they literally get us up and out of the house for a walk, which is great for us. They even help us meet new people. And sometimes they're just the thing that can completely change our mood on a bad day. Okay, so let's zoom out. Let's bring this all back together. What does this deep, profound, and often misunderstood grief for a pet really tell us about ourselves? Well, it makes us face some of the biggest questions there are. As one writer put it, for all our amazing progress, we're still just trying to figure out the basics, aren't we? Life, death, love, fear. The pain of loss is a powerful reminder that at our core, we're all just beings who are defined by the connections we make. And that's the thing. When you feel a grief for an animal that is clinically measurably similar to losing a spouse, it just shatters our old ideas about what kind of love counts. It proves that a profound, life-altering connection isn't limited by species. It's a testament to our own capacity for love. And maybe that's the ultimate lesson here. Grief is like a shadow. It only exists because there was a bright light. The pain we feel is a direct measurement of the love we gave. So when you look at it that way, grief isn't just a sign of what we've lost. It's a powerful, beautiful reminder of how much we are capable of loving in the first place.